All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. My name is Tina Roshania, and as Vice President of Manifest, Students Entrepreneurship Organization, I am thrilled to welcome you all to our first workshop this quarter on the topic of consumer psychology. Today, we have the incredible honor of hosting Richard Fleming, and he's going to give us his deep insights on this topic. Now, Richard's academic journey began in New York Tech, where he received both his bachelor's and master's in architecture. During this time, he traveled to Florence, attending Syracuse for an abroad program to broaden his perspective on the arts and architecture of Italy. Once he came back and worked for a couple of years, he decided to get his doctorate in cognition, education, and perception at none other than UCLA. And he finished his academic journey by graduating from Harvard Graduate School of Design in 2010. Now, you guys may have seen on the flyers, he's been the principal architect of many large institutions, such as Disney, Irvine Company. He actually worked first at one of the worldwide institutions called Gensler. It's an architect or city planning institution. And he's been the project designer of great, massive projects, actually. Pelican Hill Resort. Crazy, I've been there, insane. The Ritz-Carlton, I don't know if anybody knows about that, and even Fashion Island, I'm sure many of you have been there. So it's an incredible honor to have you, Richard. And not only that, he's also been a professor at one of the top 30 design institutions in Milan, and is the CEO of his own company known as Fleming for over 25 years. So please give me a round of applause as we welcome him.
My gosh, I'm gonna have that be my ringtone. You're gonna have to that is so good. I don't even remember half that. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Richard Fleming, and I am a neuroarchitect. Where that is I am an architect first and a neuroscientist, and it's the intersection of design and science. That's where I live. Now, what's interesting, if you haven't heard of this before, it's kind of rare, because there's a small group of us. I think worldwide there's 150. And so what happened is along the way, either people started off in neuroscience, studying microbiology or neurobiology, realizing their environment was important and studied design. Or people were in design, understanding that the environment was affecting their brain in neurobiology. And those two crossed over, and that's kind of that intersection that I live at. What's not unusual, I was hired by the Walt Disney Company to be in charge of designing happiness. How do you design happiness? What does that look like? What color is it? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? Does it wig beard ears? Does it have hats? Is it a flower? Is it a lollipop? All of those things are so invisible. And so part of my journey began a little bit early. And one of the questions Tina asked me is like, how do you become, where do you begin? Like when somebody, I just finished, and there's a new article out on me called Iconic Living Magazine, which just did a podcast that if you're interested, listen to it, because it's really, she was quite detailed in her questions. But what it is that where we live is at this intersection of design and science, but part of this journey is called in connecting the invisible dots. So what I like to say is like, of all of you in the room, do you all know each other? No. Have any of you met before? Yes, okay. So by show of hands, and I know I asked you that earlier, and welcome to our new visitors, who is a high school student? Again, okay, excellent. Who is a freshman? Excellent. Who is a second year student? Excellent. Third year? Fourth year? Master's? PhD? Okay, so very interesting. We're all in Irvine, but aren't we all coming to this meeting place with a different perspective, right? So, do you know if anyone in this room has the same birthday as you? Okay. Whose birthday's in January? Raise your hand. January, happy birthday. Thank you. February. 2 February. What days?
26.
20.
Okay, very close. Okay, March. Okay, what days?
31st.
1st.
11th.
Wow.
7th, okay. April.
22nd. 29.
Okay. May.
28.
24th. June.
16.
Anybody else? July.
5th.
21st.
21st.
10th.
10th. August.
4th.
4th.
15th.
15th. 7th. August. September.
22nd.
22nd.
No way! Really?
I'm on 22nd too.
Okay.
That's actually
Isn't that wild?
What are the odds?
12. Okay.
Is the name Shauna?
Should have raised my hand.
Okay. Isn't that okay?
Like
In statistically, that you had someone that was born the same time you were, and that is a rare coincidence. But understanding that wouldn't come up serendipitously, that you have to pay attention, right? And then we would never really talk about it. When's your birthday? When's your birthday? We don't. It's not going to say it. So August, September 22nd, September 22nd, October. I'm October.
Ooh.
9th,
22nd.
3rd,
13th.
13th. Any other October? Okay. November.
4th.
4th. November.
28th.
28th. December.
21st.
21st. 5th. 20th. 9th. Okay. So who wins what month? September.
I'm red.
Okay, and I'll tell you another fun little neuroscience thing.
Winning again.
The most happy neuroscience song ever studied is September by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, wow.
Guess what the date is?
22nd. Is it?
What the heck is going on?
That's so weird.
Is that you get goosebumps? Yeah.
Crazy.
So they did a study in neuroscience. What are the top 10 happiest songs? And the number one was Queen, Earth, Wind, and Fire. So when we talk about consumer behavior, when we talk about neuroscience, when we talk about architecture, the first thing is to be self-aware. So the step one of today is really to talk about inventorying who we are, where we are, and I'll tell you a funny story. So there was a neuroscience conference in New Zealand. That does not sound like a good story. Right there, you're like, okay. And they invited the magicians Penn and Teller to a neuroscience conference. And everybody was like, oh, you're going to have, oh, so-and-so, they wrote this whole cool thing, and they got a Nobel Peace Prize, and who's the speaker tonight? And it's Penn and Teller, the magicians from Las Vegas. Has anyone ever seen the Penn and Teller magicians from Las Vegas? Okay, what did you think? Interesting, right? You hated it? You could say you hated it.
No, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
They're a little bit old, aren't they a bit old? They're a little bit old. Did anyone go up on stage? No? Okay. So Penn and Teller talk about neuroscience. And what they were saying is it was the beginning of artificial intelligence. And at this neuroscience conference, they said, listen, we magicians know something the rest of the population doesn't, is that you all have blind spots. And the reason we know is because we've been doing magic for for centuries. And so we'll be like, oh, look over here, and then they take the rabbit out of the head. And what it is, it's, distraction and all this stuff. But what happens is they'll show a cup, right? And you'll see this cup on your end, and your brain will complete the cup and say, well, it must be completely round, and it's not, it's a crescent. And that's where they hide the dove that pops out or whatever. And so what happens in neuroscience is that our brains naturally have a blind spot. What that means practically for you and understand consumer behavior, you have a blind spot. And what do we do when we're self-aware that we have a blind spot is we try to figure out who might be the opposite of us to bring on the team. So understanding that the human brain from a neuroscience standpoint has a blind spot, magicians know this, and they've been working us, been paying good money to get fooled. How does that darn elephant arrive on the stage, right? And we, as our human brains, did not know that. So part of the conversation is to recognize self-awareness of who we are, that as human beings, do not be frustrated, do not be upset, we have a blind spot. So now what is our pattern? What is our style? What is our way in which we're going to fill in the blind spot? Now I jokingly say, I'm married, which is not a joke, but I'm married. And I go home and I tell my wife, blah, 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 blah. And she'll say to me, and I'll say, oh my God, I invented this great clicker, da 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 da. And I want her to answer me about all the features, the benefits. what this is going to do, it's going to change the world. And she'll say to me, well, what other color does it come in? And I'll be like, well, she says, well, how do you know what's your clicker and the next presenter's clicker? Can I get it in pink? And I'll be like, what the heck? And I'll be like, oh, that is who we need to have on our teams. We need to check our blind spots, right? A lot of products are designed by a certain gender, male for male, female for female, and they don't see each other's, the iPad was not a popular sentence to women when it first came out. And everybody was like, there was not a woman in that meeting, right? And so you have to recognize that when conversations start and get finished, you have to recognize, I have a blind spot, how can I double check this? So recently I was up at the headquarters for Apple and I don't know if has anyone ever been to up to Northern California to they have like a welcome center that has a model of the campus. Have you ever seen that? It's got the big circle. So you probably know, you've seen this, but you didn't know you saw it. But the campus is designed as a perfect circle, perfect ring. And the person giving the tour was a gentleman who was a teacher for special needs. And I said to him, oh, are you like a computer scientist? Are you an engineer? And he says, no, I'm a teacher of special needs. And I think to myself, and he's talking to me, and okay, maybe I get, maybe I look, like I could use an extra few minutes, right? And I'm like, okay, so let me try to help myself out here. And I said to him, why? And he said, what Apple realized was that they were not tapping into everybody, and they left people out. And so what they started to do is hire from the Blind Institute, that they started to hire people that were from spiritual schools, that were intuitives, psychics, that they started to, and they realized that they were picking employees from completely different industries than the current path. And it was fascinating to me. And it was fascinating to him. He said, you would not believe who the new wave of computer engineers are, and it's not anyone from any engineering school. It has to do with people who are tapping into other things. Music, culinary arts, dance. People that have other means of communicating, right? So I was telling you my two sons, they go to school in Paris, and I have 3 kids, and they're all about your age. And so I have Grant, Blake, and Ava. They'll watch this. They'll be all upset I use their names. And they're all very close, and they're all passionate about their different professions. Grant and Blake's school is very easy. Ava works her butt off to get the same super grades. And Blake comes home and he says, oh my God, my first semester, I was so happy, Dad. I had this fabulous class. And I said, oh, what was your class in? He said, calculus. Right? My daughter literally overheard him and she said, I'm going to freaking throw up. She goes, I have the world's weirdest brothers. She goes, they think calculus is the coolest subject on the planet. And he's like, well, of course, because it's not like literature where you have an interpretation. I get to an answer. And when she heard that, he was like, oh, now she's kind of a bit of a recruit. So why I say this is he goes to Paris and he takes a class, and I said, listen, I know you love calculus, but you can't take calculus. I want you to communicate in a different language. What classes might he want to take? Sculpting, drawing, model making, art. I said, I want you to understand how others communicate, right? Because the sculptor needs to communicate with this piece of marble that he's going to chisel out, whatever that is. The others, the model making is going to take found objects and assemble something to communicate a vision, right? The artist is going to go back in history and tell either a historical or fictional story, right? But they're all communicating, right? And we're all using our thumbs right now to communicate, but maybe it's dance. Maybe there's something else in another form and a medium to communicate. So when we're talking about communicating and reaching our clients, maybe it's not in the traditional forms of communication.
So Richard, I have a question actually.
Yes.
Sorry, in the middle of your word. Communication is probably one of the biggest, soft skills for an entrepreneur, right? You have to work with so many different people. You have to cater to your consumers. How do you become a good communicator just amongst your peers?
Okay, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. Somebody give me 5 people in the group here that would like to just tell me one of their favorite places they want to go visit, like on their bucket list.
Japan.
Japan. Tell me more.
I really like Japanese food, like sushi.
Excellent. Somebody else?
Scandinavia.
Scandinavia. Tell me more.
It's like, you mentioned earlier, like human-centric. Like I've heard it's very human-centric.
Excellent. Anybody else?
Dubai.
Dubai.
I feel like it's just a bustling world of just e-commerce and just like business, but it also has a lot of shopping, and I love shopping, so I feel like it'd be really nice to go there.
Excellent.
Thailand, because it's cheaper than here. And
Like Stephen.
Excellent.
Switzerland, because like it's like really calm and I want to spend a lot of money.
Excellent.
Iceland,
Iceland. Tell me.
because it's the really pretty views, like the hiking trails and stuff. It's super pretty.
Anybody else? Yes?
Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah, just the tranquility of sand dunes and like the monuments, like the pyramids are just so spiritual to me. I love it.
Excellent. So did anybody happen to catch anything that somebody just said that was the same?
Wasn't from here.
Was it from here? I asked a question and you said, I feel Dubai, blah, blah, blah. I think, da, 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 da. I know now that you're a feeler or a thinker. Right? And I can communicate to you now. So if I'm going to give you information, right? I'm going to say, you're going to be able to have the most wonderful group of people that gather together, and it's going to be a dining room with 12 chairs. The thinker, I'm going to say, you're going to have 12 chairs in a dining room that's 120 square feet. You're going to have a great group of people. I'm going to give you the same information, architectural example, but I'm going to put feelings first and thinking first. So that I give you what you need so you hear me and it sticks. It is the cheapest, shortest way to communicate, is repeat back their form of communicating. They're a thinker, they're a feeler.
Now I'm never gonna answer any of your questions.
Are
Like
you-
they did.
You're just
He
gonna
knows
say,
too
go
much.
analyze me.
No, but it helps
He knows
because
too much.
I
Richard
feel,
Zuckerberg.
I think, I do both. I feel and I think, right? And you know when you're making, so I was in a meeting recently and so I'm doing a TV show for potentially Netflix. We'll see what happens. And so it's a 2-time Emmy Award-winning gentleman. His name is PJ Harrison, and he asked me to do a TV show to kind of like help people. And he said, hey, listen, would you be interested in this show? And it's called Tapping In. And it's with an intuitive, Marissa Grieco. And so she's like, I'd like to interview for a TV show and do a series on tapping in. How do you tap in? Okay, so what does that mean to me? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to her? Right? And I'm in a creative business and I love the blank piece of paper. Right? But it might stress other people out. But for me, I love the blank piece of paper. And so what she was saying is that you feel things and you think things. And then what I said back to her is I said, I believe that humans, for the longest time, we believed we are thinkers who feel. But as a species, we are feelers that learn to think. So that means we got information like, oh, there's the weather change. Oh, that group seems friendly or not friendly, or that looks dark and scary. And all of these things did not have to be read on a YouTube Yelp review, scary restaurant. Right? Like it had to be like, yeah, nobody's in there. I don't think I'm going in there. Somebody must have said 10 stars because that place is empty, right? Like you're going to go with your gut, your feeling. But the gut is different than the heart. So in the show, we talk about heart and gut. Gut is nerve, heart is love. It's precognitive. Has anyone ever been to a really cool hotel?
Yeah.
And you've just like, oh, I love this place. And it's precognitive. You don't
Pelican
even,
Hill.
Pelican Hill, right?
Amazing.
I did Pelican Hill. By the way, it's a very large group of people that did anything.
But still.
So, and you love it before you know why you love it. That's a feel, right? It's precognitive. And then the analytical side comes in. I was like, I think it's because it's got big high ceilings and it's beautiful ocean view and it's, but you don't really know why you love it before you love it. That is part of what we're tapping into. Like giving yourself space to tap into that natural thing that humans have, which is love it before they know why they love it. So, if that helps. Does that make sense, anybody? Does that?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, so as you reflect on this kind of conversation, do you realize you're in a thinking environment, right? And you're in an entrepreneur center, which is what? A feeling environment? And you're like trying to come up with things. And you're like, And it's like, okay, let me think about this for a second. No, let me feel about this for a second. What would be the best, like if I could design out a problem, if I could, like if you can practice doing the assignment, feeler and thinker, and try to see it come up with a solution, right? Because sometimes everyone's like, oh, I want to create an app and reach 8 billion people, right? And you're like, oh, that would be great, sell everyone $1, it's $8 billion, and I'll be rich by the time I'm like 17 and a half. Like, okay, that's a thinker thing. Then the reality of it is, does everybody have $1? And how are they going to spend? How am I going to get their $1? Like you get that assignment challenge. But the idea is that you have to recognize that human behavior is the same. We were talking about when I was growing up. Like, oh God, do I sound like a parent or teacher or whatever? But when I was growing up, I was so excited to go from chalkboard to marker board. Teasing you. But when you recognize that you guys were born with a Ferrari at your fingertips, and you can connect with each other globally, it's unbelievable. It's probably why you're feeling the pressure. It's like all of a sudden take this newborn and put him into NASA's space launch keyboard and sit in front of the keyboard and say, okay, listen, just pick a number and figure out Mars, Jupiter, and you're like, okay, I feel the pressure. I don't know why I'm feeling the pressure to grow up. And they're like, okay. And you're like, oh, no. Nobody ever said my chalk drawings on the sidewalk were you're going to be an architect. Nobody said that. You guys, you have a lot of pressure on you, so just recognize that. Try to take it off of yourselves. And I know it's easier to say and harder to do. But it's just understand the one thing that you have that you're going to take with you forever is your brain, and your customer's brain, and your spouse's brain, and your parents' brain, and your siblings' brain. Like, this will never change, right? And so learning about that, and we talk about communication, but learning about that is probably, it is the lifelong gift that you can tap into over and over again. And I did not know that. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you talked about communication, how knowing yourself, and then asking people certain questions and taking note of their responses, depending on whether they're a thinker, feeler, or whatever they may be. So as an architect, you've designed so many different concepts, areas, spaces, and as entrepreneurs, we're trying to design products for our consumers. When do you know when it's time to feel out your design or feel out the user experience, and when it's time to feasibly think about the logistics or how it's going to be together?
So I'll give you an example. So I don't want to use my kids again, sorry, but in Paris, there's one of the biggest European think tanks called Station F. Has anyone ever heard of it? Look it up. It's going to be fabulous. You're going to love it. Station F in Paris, France. And what happened in Paris, so different than us here in the United States, is that they had an enormous youth population that were afraid to take a risk. And the owner of Free Mobile, and by the way, it's not free, the mobile company, created this company, took a train station in Paris called Station F, and created this incubator and it has housing, a restaurant, and a 1-year commitment. You can't work, but you've got to work on your idea. Funded by Louis Vuitton, the Brain Institute of Paris, and a bunch of others. And a speaker came to that meeting called Hugging Face. Has anyone ever heard of Hugging Face? Okay. And he came and he spoke, and by the way, I wasn't there, my kids were there at the event. And like you, they waited till everybody left and they went up and talked to the founders. And they said, what do you wish you knew at my age? Which happens to be your age. And he said, I spent 2 years on an idea to get to the marketplace to know within 2 hours it was a terrible idea. He said, I ended up spending 2 days on an idea, launched it into the world in a rough and tumbled state, and realized that's it, that's Hugging Face. He said, don't hold on to the idea for more than 2 days. Get it out there. Test it, get a reaction, see what happens. Don't love, they call it, you ever heard of hugging the puppy? Has anyone ever used that experience? So there's some things like sometimes you can love an idea so much, and then you kill the puppy. And it's like a thing you have to be careful of. So don't hold on to your idea too much. 2 days. So what is today?
Wednesday.
By Friday, you should have launched it. Okay? And then see how it goes. Okay? And tell everybody about it, and let everybody say that's stupid, ridiculous, I love it, get hated. Try to do a pool of 100 people. I don't know if anyone's told you that 30 is kind of a sample pool, but 100's about a good indicator. And leave your geography, but literally walk out the door, walk on campus, go off the campus, go into the town, go on the beach. Try to think of different environments and just get it out there. 2 days. So Hugging Face's $4 billion company's advice was 2 days. He said, what I wished I knew at your age, the second answer, was the second question, what I knew at your age, which is that I wished I knew people were really genuinely willing to help me, and I was afraid to ask. Like, don't ask for the job, ask to interview the CEO. Because it's not a transaction, now it's kind of a mentorship. So say, hey, would you have a moment that I'd love to know about how you got started, right? So if you're trying to access someone, interview them. I'm doing a school project, you're all very bright guys and girls, humans, right, because you're here. This is a very top school, right? You worked really hard to be in the room. Like I was saying earlier, the high school students, you are at the top of the pyramid of aggressive learners. So I studied in cognition, I studied aggressive, resistive, and passive learners. Right? And the passive learners are like, I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it, they don't, whatever they do, they don't. But the aggressive learners, I'm going to do it, I'm going to sit in the front of the class, I'm going to come in, I'm going to join a group, like you're at the top, you're an aggressive learner. That's not everybody. I'm an aggressive learner, right? I have 2 degrees. I'm the only architect, and I'm the only neuroscientist. Like, my pool is really tiny, and like when I meet another Martian, I'm like, hi, I come in peace. It's a fun group, but you're there, you're in that group. So recognize here, try to connect with each other. You're a special group, and you don't get it now, but when you go off into the real world, you should all have at least had a meaningful conversation with each other while you go to university here. So those 2 things would be wish I knew. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely, that was great. I actually wanted to know if you're comfortable sharing the story you shared with me about, the thing you designed for Disney and like how you came to come up with that design.
Yes. So I'm writing a book. I'm actually supposed to have finished it. I'm going to be very honest with you all.
2 days.
2 days! By Friday, it's out. Check.
3-day rule now.
Check Amazon. It's called Connecting the Dots. I've written it like 300 pages. And I'm trying to figure out who my audience is because I really want it to be you. I want you to read it. And I have my other academics, my clinical professors, that tell me they've written 27 books. And I always say to them, how many have you sold? And they're like, 1. And I'm like, what do you think it is? Is it all the citations? Is it nothing relatable? Is it all about mice in a maze? Come on, after a while we get this, the mice. Or is it human behavior? right? And so mine is about human behavior. So let me tell you a little bit story about my pre-connecting the dots. So my book is called Connecting the Invisible Dots, or The Invisible Architecture. And I try to bridge the gap, the intersection of design and science, very much all what we're talking about. But here's the beginning, the pre-dots, for me. So I grew up with another form of communication. I have grandparents that are fashion designers. So they would amaze me as a little child. Anybody else have a family of fashion or tailors or fabric or anything in textiles? Yes? What kind of business?
He's manufacturer. My dad is a manufacturer of fabrics.
Manufacture fabrics. Do you ever go and see him at work?
Not really. I haven't
Not
been
really?
in the past 4 years.
Not the past 4 years? How about growing up? Did you ever see fabric?
Yeah, wait, I've seen.
So does anybody know the different fabrics, if I was just to say that? This is going to sound a silly question. Does anyone know what cashmere is?
Yeah.
Cashmere? Okay. Yes? Has anyone seen wool, silk? Anyone seen a rubbish bag? Right? Like, you can make things out of everything. Right? So what does one choose? So growing up, real quick, connecting the invisible dots, I grew up as a little kid, 8 years old. My grandparents had this fabric they would roll out, and it would fold on the table in a really folded, interesting way. And I remember my grandfather standing back, and he would have this piece of chalk that they use when they do tailoring, and he would go, and he would put the dots down. And in the corner was a hanger, and the hanger had this really cool, abstract art-looking manila piece of cutout, and he would take the manila piece of cardboard, put it on the fabric, take that white piece of chalk, trace it, and then cut it, give it to my grandmother. She would sew it, and it became a sleeve. And I was like, what? How did you take that flat, flimsy thing and make a sleeve? That's how I got into understanding design. That you are dotting things, and he was seeing something that was finished before we see it. He was looking at the fabric in a different way. Fast forward it, I'm in high school, your age, and I was wearing a ring. I don't know if you guys get high school rings anymore. Do you? Okay, let me tell you my high school ring story. This is my wedding ring. And just in case you didn't know that was a ring. Anyway, so it's like show and tell today. So I was wearing a ring, and I was playing soccer, and I went, oh, and I jumped up, and on the goalpost, there's a net, and there's these little pigtail curls, and my ring got hooked under the net and pulled my finger off. Guess which one? Right? And my finger was on the ground. I picked it up. I went over to the ice, put it in ice, held it, and ran to the hospital a mile. I was playing soccer, so I was a good runner, right? And I got to the hospital, and I'm like, fix it.
Make me a scarf.
Yeah, make me a scarf. Yeah, like do something really good with this. Go back and see if you can make this into like a shirt, a sleeve, a tie, something good. And I went into surgery, and they gave me too much anesthesia, and I went into a coma. So at a young boy, at 14 years old, I was in a coma, and I'm lying in the hospital bed, and I, from all external purposes, am not about to make it. But I can hear everybody. I can see the bright light through my eyes. I can smell the antiseptics. I hear, my mother had this long necklace on, and it was this annoying tapping on the bed frame, the metal bed frame. And now my mother's Italian, and she has 9 sisters, and they all came to the hospital, and they were talking so bloody much. And I remember thinking, I wish I could just tell them to shush. But I could not move. I didn't understand then, and I'll tell you it has a little fast forward story, why that was about to prepare me for why I'm here today with you. Is because I realized I was taking everything in with my eyes closed, even though everybody thought I wasn't present. I was in a coma. Spoiler alert, I made it, right? And so now I am recovered, and they've reattached my finger, and all through high school they called me Fingers Fleming, which was a terrible sentence, but it could have been worse. And so I ended up going off to Connecticut. I grew up in New England. Connecticut is north of New York City. And so I ended up, my parents wanted to move, and they were struggling to find land, and there was this really crazy piece of land, like the fabric. And I said to them, oh, just do this, put the foundation here and build it. And my parents were like, oh, okay. And they built the house. It was a big house. And I won an award. And I got published in the New York Times.
You're 17, right?
I was 17.
Crazy.
I didn't know that you're not supposed to do that. I just thought it was pretty obvious it should have been there all the time, the connecting the invisible dots. So I go off to college. I am sitting in your class. I am taking marketing, and we have to come up with a marketing idea. This is painful to admit. And everybody had a brilliant idea but me. Everybody had Jordache jeans and commercials and flyovers, and you get to pick your product and your marketing plan. And I said, I'm going to pick fish, and I'm going to sell them as bumper stickers. Is there a lower grade than F? I don't know, but I got it, right? And the professor's like, seriously, you picked fish and a bumper sticker? Like, this person's got jeans and Jordache and like all this thing, and it's like, son, you are really not good at this. Like, this is not your superpower, right? And I was like, I'm crushed, right? And so they go like, what else you got? What else you got? I said, oh, well, I guess over the summer I built a house and I got published in a magazine. They're like, excuse me? What? Go back. I said, yeah, my parents were frustrated. They had a piece of land. They could and I did this, and it's kind of like a suit. I made the house symmetrical, like the lapels are the shutters, and the windows are the pocket squares, and the boutonniere is like the wreath on the door, and And they said, do you know what an architect is? And I said, I've never met an architect. And they said, oh, well, let me work on that. And so the professor told the dean called his friend, the dean of School of Architecture, and he said, this kid, who's terrible in marketing, built a house that got published in a magazine. He should get in, and they moved me 3 days over Christmas break, this time of year, into the School of Architecture, and I was a duck to water. I had a wood shop, and art gallery, and history, and calculus, and physics, and everything all wrapped in one. And I was in love. And it was very natural for me. That is why I come to here tonight, is because somebody took his time, her time, to listen to me, to say, son, you're really good at this, and I've told you you're really good at this, I told you you're really good at this. Like, I want to listen to each one of you, and I want you to know that you're really good at stuff. And if you don't know what you're really good at, I want to help you with that, because somebody helped me, and it changed my trajectory. Well, imagine how starving I'd be if I was in the bumper sticker business. Right? You know where I'd be today? Like the streets. Yeah, you'd be like driving by. Yeah. Nobody told him he's in the wrong major. So listening to who you are and tapping you on the shoulder, part of why I love that name of the show, Tapping In, is to help people listen to where they need to be. So I go to become an architect, I graduate, I get my first job, I'm working in Los Angeles, I'm designing a hospital, I do an intensive care unit, and there's an 8-year-old boy in the intensive care unit. And it's a brand new facility at UCLA, and this child is in a coma, and his parents are sobbing out of control, holding his hands. And I think it was an infection, but I don't know why he wasn't coming out of the coma. And I was so proud of myself because I did everything technical. This was a beautiful new state-of-the-art facility. All the architects in my office did this. And he wasn't getting better, and I went home and I wept. And I said, how could I have given him everything, and this person is not getting better? And I thought, okay, wait a minute, I was in a coma. I was in a coma. The lights are too bright. It's too noisy. It smells weird. And the next day I went back, and I met with the electrical engineer, and I said, hey, can we pre-program the lights? It was winter and the sun sets at 4 p.m. Can we dim the lights from this bright 5,000 kelvins? Because all the doctors went home and all the nurses went home, but the little boy was under this light constantly. Can we dim it to 2,700 kelvins, and then at sunrise at 7 a.m. go up? And he said, sure. And I said, let's work on this. So I did it. We programmed it. He got better in 2 days. Came out of it. And I realized, oh my God, it's not neurobiology, it's neuroarchitecture. And the doctor with me said, hey, Richard, do you know what cognitive sciences are? Do you understand this is a new field? You should apply to UCLA for a doctorate in neuroscience. And I'm like, listen, is this a joke? I said, I mean, I don't know the ear from the elbow right now. Like, what are you talking about? They're not going to take me. I applied and I got in. I'm the only architect they ever let in. I tortured them. I think the only architect I'll ever let out, right? But I really wanted to connect the invisible dots. And so that is my journey. It was from my pain, like a horrible thing, that I became better at my craft of observing others in pain, this child and these parents, to be better to help communities, to help people. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, how many more people could we help? Is it people with cancer? Could we end like this? And I started doing research. And so there's a lot of easy data in education. Classrooms with natural daylight. You increase your cognitive abilities, your learning and thinking, 26%. Okay, people, Starbucks is gonna go out of business because the secret to a brain boost is daylight. Where is your desk? Where is your desk? Is it at the window? If it's not at the window, your desk needs to be at the window. If you have daylight and it has greenery on the other side, it's 28%. How do we know this? You can look it up. Classrooms studied students that took exams with classrooms with windows and no windows. How come the hospitals don't know this? All the intensive care units are in the middle of the hospital so the nurses can see them, and none of them had windows. So what I realized is that there's silos of industries that don't talk. Guess what the common denominator is? Us, the human, the brain. And so that's why I wanted to share this book, because it'll be done in 2 days, that it's connecting the invisible dots. So this industry and this industry, so it's sort of the Reese's peanut butter cup. It's like chocolate and peanut butter, and you put them together, you got Reese's peanut butter cup. Like, there's those conversations that are happening in entrepreneurship, that are gonna happen with communication, that you're gonna start to put industries together. Make sense? Yeah?
Wow, Richard, amazing insights. Sorry, I interject all the time.
That's good. I don't want anyone to, I don't want to.
But, so I've noticed a trend, right? Getting to know yourself, okay? Knowing your own psyche, knowing how you react to things biologically, mentally, to know other people, to know your consumers. And then knowing your blind spots, right? What you can't see, what you might miss, your skills, what is the opposite of that? And then the last part would be knowing your environment and your opportunities, right? So how do we get from knowing yourself to then knowing your blind spots to then executing in the world?
So, does anybody know anyone working for the FBI or CIA or police department or? Yeah? Okay. Anybody else? Yes? Yes? Do they ever tell you how they go through their day, what they do?
Just got up really early.
Right? They notice things.
Very
They're very observant. What are they looking for? What do you think?
Like anomalies that the regular citizen doesn't see on a daily
Yes,
basis.
anomalies, what the regular citizen misses. Like what? Sunglasses indoors, right? Like things that don't make sense to them that we might pass off, right? How do you take what you want to do is part of how you observe opportunities. So my storyline is like, how do you make money? How do you make money? How you make money in life is by seeing opportunities that don't exist. I wish I had a piece of metal to hold my 2 pieces of paper together. Paperclip, right? Like those are opportunities. Being a great observer. Play a game. Like how many people in here have hats on? Okay. How many people have UCI sweatshirts on? How many people have white tennis shoes?
Oh, that's hard.
Great. How many people have an aura ring? How many people have earrings? How many are wearing glasses? Like, start to be a great observer. They're your customer. If I'm doing a goggle and I notice half the people in my room are wearing glasses, do you think I got a challenge? Right? Like, start to notice things. Like, we were talking about tennis shoes. Were we talking about tennis shoes? One of the presenters had tennis shoes. Like, understand what's happening around us. Like, you know, the big joke is people love pockets, right? Well, why do we like pockets, right? And you know, the reason so often we say that, if you ever heard a woman describe a dress, she will talk about, this dress has pockets, right? And you might as well say it has, you know, a direct connection to, you know, I don't know. You know what I mean? It comes with an unloaded Amazon gift card. You don't know what they're thinking when they say it, but there's something there that when things are anticipatory, when they have made room for the way you actually live, those are huge. You know, you ever go to a concert and you can't bring a purse in? What's up? Nobody's come up with a cool, clear thing, right? Like, there's things that are happening all around us that we just need to make sense to, and there's your business opportunities.
Ooh, Richard, you told me a story of when you designed, I think it was like a restaurant or something that was for like the elites more. You were talking about like the heating mechanisms that you put. Can you please tell me, because that was a time where you used a lot of observation.
So, Pelican Hill Resort, I know we're being recorded. So Pelican Hill Resort has a demographic of people my age. Now, I have been follically gifted. Right? So that's not always my peer group. And ironically, I have a friend, Todd, who is bald, and I don't know why every time I talk to him, I tell him I'm going for a haircut, and I feel like, I was like, of all my friends, I keep telling him I'm going for a haircut? Like, that's so insensitive. So, at Pelican Hill Resort, all the customers were men who lost their hair and women who were on vacation wearing cute dresses and sandals. And the solution was a heat lamp. Guess who that's not going to be such a great thing for? The guy that's bald. He is going to be melting like Frosty, right? So what we realized, that's not the direction we heat. We're going to heat this way because she is wearing sandals. So we're going to heat the floor. So we ended up heating the floor and radiating up. She did the same thing. So instead of heating down, we heated up, observing what they were doing and wearing.
Amazing.
Right? Same solution, better result.
All right, Richard. Well, thank you so much for all of your insights, everyone. Thank you so much. We're going to give our audience about 15 minutes to ask any questions they have of you, and then you can get wrapped up in, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I remember we met at 1 Million Cups actually.
Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
You had a
we're-
great presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it. So my question was, you mentioned earlier that concept of like, because a lot of neuroscientists talk about like being in light helps you learn better.
Mhm.
But what would you say for people who learn better at dark, for example, night owls? And what would you say is the best solution for people who study later at night, for example?
Oh, great
Better
question.
adapt at night.
So that's circadian rhythms, right? So again, step one is self-awareness. So know when your peak learning is, your peak, you know, like, are you a night owl? Okay, so first of all, I absorb more at ... night. So your brain goes into, has anyone ever studied circadian rhythms? Okay, so you understand about the different stages, right, of the brain? So that's where you are. So now what could you do to combine those two together? Because there's no product on the market right now for you. Right, so is it a lamp? Imagine you lived in Seattle, right? Like, there are lamps that give off better daylight. Maybe it's a pen, maybe it's a pad, so on and so forth. So no one's done the Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Thank you, great question. You got a product. Right? Anybody else? Yes?
What exactly do you do at Disney?
So at Disney, my job was to design happiness. Doesn't that seem very clear?
You should talk about the journal. a little bit.
So what was very interesting is that my job at Disney was I had 1,000 projects a year for 10 years. That's why I have an enormous, like people, like most architects build 1,600 projects in a lifetime. I built 10,000. So I basically worked like in Santa's workshop, like keep making toys, But the big idea was I used to design happiness, and it began with understanding I needed to design with my eyes closed. So the first thing I would do is close my eyes and figure out what this is going to smell like, what it's going to sound like, what it's going to feel like. And that would be the beginning of the design, never what it looked like first. So what does that mean? So when you go, have you been to Disneyland? Okay, have you walked down Main Street? Do you know the secret of what's happening on the left of the street? The Smelitzer machine was a patent in 1989. What they realized, the customer and consumer were two different things. I don't know if you've heard this, but the customer were the parents that bought the ticket, the consumer was the child. The consumer is who they wanted to come back for the next 60 years. The customer was going to age out. So what they did is they tapped into the olfactory, by the way, of all your senses. Like you think about things entering your blood, your things entering your tactile, your ear. The shortest path to your brain is through your nose. Like literally, the shortest distance. So they realized the quickest way to get to your brain into the hippocampus is always like the cool part of the university. It's like the best part of it's the belt that holds everything together, right? Is smell. So what they did is they would pump the smell of vanilla in, but guess where they put it at? Not at the customer height, they put it at the consumer height. And where was that? The stroller. So it is about a foot off the ground, and it pumps the smell of vanilla. And as they're pushing the stroller, that kid, precognitive, smells vanilla and is happy. Just put two things together. Happiness and olfactory smell. Now vanilla is another reason they picked that specifically. But anyway, there's a whole research on it. If you look it up, it's got a patent in 1989. It's a Smelitzer machine. It designs with smell. So what we did is we would curate smell zones. So there's basically 5 power smells, right? So you know all of this, but I'll just put it in. So vanilla, right? Cheat sheet. Coffee. Cinnamon. Citrus. Chocolate. What does your product smell like that you're inventing? Right? Don't leave that off the table. It is the most powerful thing. I was on a plane with a woman sitting next to me. We're coming back from Milan, Italy, and she was so excited because I guess they save all the fabrics from thousands of years, and she came up with a new pattern. And she says, I make really expensive bathing suits. And they're beautiful, right? And they're gorgeous. I mean, you would love them, right? And she opens it up and she goes, oh my God, look at our wrapping paper and our sticker and the box, and the people love it, and they usually buy 2 or 3 at a time. And what do you think I asked her? What does it smell like? And what do you think she did? She goes, what do you mean? She goes, I have been in marketing meetings. No one's ever asked me what my bathing suit smells like. I'm like, well, where are they going? With a bathing suit to the beach. And are they putting anything on with the bathing suit? Sunscreen. What's the smell of sunscreen? Anybody?
No.
Not chocolate, but you know what? Chocolate might be the new smell of sunscreen. Anybody? Citrus. Excellent. What else? Coconut. Anything else? So I said to her, what does your bathing suit smell like? And we sat on the whole plane ride designing what her bathing suit tags would smell like, that she would put in the package, that when they opened it up, they would remember her product for the rest of their life. And when somebody would walk by with coconut oil, they would think of her. What does your product smell like? Anybody have a product? Is anybody working on an idea? We have 2 days, right? Yes, idea. Anybody an idea? Idea? Online?
It's all software, so how would that work in there?
What is it?
It's all software, so how would
Do you realize how much money you're leaving on the table?
colors and everything?
How can you connect smell to that? Nobody's doing it. It is a big deal. It is a big deal.
Something with like color psychology.
Citrus is
psychology.
yellow, so yellow color, I don't know.
Is it chocolate? Is it cinnamon? Is it vanilla? Is it, you know what I mean?
Can you get like the stimulation of the smell by looking at like a color that's associated with the smell?
Yeah.
Well, yes, there is a thing that could happen is you could trigger trauma. We should talk about that, right?
Show you see.
My daughter, Ava, I bought orange flavored chocolate and we drove to Lake Tahoe. She sat in the back seat and got car sick. And whenever she smells orange chocolate, she's like, that was terrible. We're not allowed to have an orange tree. We're not allowed to have orange anything in our house. So you have to be mindful that if you did not curate the first event, you're going to be triggering potentially trauma of the second event. So you almost want to be the authenticator of the first experience. That's positive, if you can. Yay! But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have
Yes.
a question. What has been your hands-down favorite design project or piece of architecture you've worked on? Or one of them? I know that's a hard question considering 10,000 pieces.
Well, I think it would be, I love my kids, right? And I didn't realize that I got so much joy out of inventing my products, which is architecture, that I got so much joy out of it, right? And you guys are loving but imagine the person who's using it loves it. And imagine you love them. So I designed a dance studio for my daughter. I designed a dance studio that my daughter went to. And one day I sat there and I'm like, oh my God, I did this. And my kid is dancing in this space. And it was like, oh, I never thought about that. That the user would be my kid. Like honestly, I never thought about it. And so therefore, that was cool. I designed a restaurant in downtown Disney. My kids liked the sandwich. But it was watching her love to dance and I designed it for her. I didn't design it for her, I designed it for an avatar, but it ended up being her.
Wow.
And I thought that was the coolest thing. Unexpected.
I have another.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, this is because you talk about, your kids a lot and also your...
Too much.
No, not at all. For me, I love studying like parenting, and especially in today's society, I feel like we have a lot of gaps in parenting and getting the right information out there. And technology is moving so fast in that realm. I just want to ask, it's a little bit unrelated, but as a parent, what do you think is the biggest struggle that kids in our age range today face, and how do you think you help combat that with your kids, or other parents help combat that?
I think there's a lot of pressure on you to not understand where you are in the bigger perspective. Like, that map, you are here. You ever see that where they've got that cool little upside down pin? And it's you are here. Remember the first step I said self-awareness? Can I do a marker board thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I don't know if I can raise this. So I took a class and I remember having this story where I had a professor, who was a law professor, and he was teaching a class on time. And he said, the one thing that you don't realize is you are here, but where are you in perspective of time? And at first I thought it was funny. I used the metaphor of pizza, right? And I say, so how are you going to spend your time? Are you going to do half cheese, half pepperoni? Are you going to sleep and learn? Are you going to sleep and learn? Wait a minute. Are you going to love sleep, and learn? Are you going to work, sleep, and learn? Are you going to travel? You're not going to make the pie any bigger. And this is your life. So how do you slice up the pie? Do you recognize how important it is to put all the key things in now? And so they take up the most important slices. And I think what happens is you're in an environment where they only talk about that slice. But recognize it might be travel that wakes you up, lights you up, right? So this was the first one. The second one in the book, I wrote this thing about, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, this should be 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, great. So this is going to be depressing, but we're going to go with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So imagine I did all dots. This is your lifetime. 100 years. Right? You are here. Where are you? So, 10, 18,
20.
19, 20.
Oh shit.
Oh shit, right? Do you realize how much farther you have to go and how much pressure you're putting on yourself right here? Understand, zoom out for a moment. Put it in perspective. Yes, it seems huge. I didn't make it in bumper stickers. My life is over. No, your life has not even begun yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, you might not even, you might get all the way down to here, and you might be hitting your stride, but you are here in life. This is your time, and this is where you are. And the reason I say that is that this is pretty formulaic. You know, the challenge with education is that it's front-loaded, right? You got 4 years, and then you've got this long tail, and I'm going to live to 100 with what I learned in the first 4 years. That's stressful. So how are you going to find your life beat? How are you going to constantly plug in? How are you going to refresh, learn, reconnect, give back, right? This is the way the system is right now. But this is really a much better plan for lifetime learning. So be mindful, you know, you need to figure out do I need to travel? Do I need to make time for love? Do I make time for learning? Do I make time for whatever those things are for you? Put your list together and recognize how your time is. Understand where you are. This is pretty prescriptive, right? The first 10 years, the second 10 years, you got primary school, then you've got secondary school, then you've got university and work, and then you've got life, you've got retirement, and then you've got old age. Why it's important for you to see that is because you'll understand where your customer is. Like, where are you meeting them? Are they here in a kind of a formulaic way? Or are they here kind of controlling all of their time? Are they here where you're at the time where you don't have to worry about schedule, you can give back? Right? Are they here? They might need a little extra help crossing the street. You know? Like, where are we meeting them? This was really important to me because I already had 2 degrees by the time I was 27. Guess what I did not have any room for?
A third degree.
Say again?
A third degree.
A 3rd degree. I really do want a 3rd degree, which is a problem. But that might be over here.
That's why it's bad.
I have to control myself. My wife's like, "You're going to UCI? You're coming back, right? You're not staying 4 years." Like, no, I'm just going for an hour. But guess what I didn't leave room for? Honestly, this. It was the craziest thing. I got through all my degrees, happy, architecture, da-da-da-da-da-da, and I didn't leave room for love. And it was the craziest thing that I was so not aware of it.
How
Now,
did you find out?
my sister's a shrink. She went to, I don't know who has a great sister, but my sister's a therapist, she's a shrink. And she said to me, so Richard, are you going to take another degree, bro? And I was like, and I said, you know, I was kind of thinking, you know, no one's talking about archaeology or astronomy and how that could intersect, right? And she's like, it's time out, I want to set you up on a date. And my sister set me up on a date. And my wife was a school teacher, 4th grade. And it was terribly like a lightning bolt hit me. And I was so pissed off because it was so logically, I was wanting to be in control, and I was so feeling that this was the greatest thing. It was like breathing. It was like hanging out with your best friend. And it was spontaneous, and it was great. And I just figured that nobody put that on my list when I was talking about picking a career at your age. Find time to figure out who is your complement. What might be good for you. It's honestly, when you get down here, that will be the thing you cherish. I know we're not talking about that, but when you talk about customers, consumer behavior, all of that, that's the thing I wish somebody had put on my list.
All right, Richard,
that
thank you
crazy?
so
Okay.
much for your time.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, everyone.